I got an update for all of you on this based-ass law that is now going to be getting passed in 2024. In Mississippi. Old Miss. We love Mississippi here, don't we? Hypers in chat if we like Mississippi. Old Miss. Amid ongoing concerns about reproductive access in the Magnolia State, Mississippi's Democratic lawmakers and advocacy groups are slanted to introduce the Right to Contraception Act in February. Let's go. I talked about this when it was first written up, but now it's going to be full-on proposed next month. And we're going to see whether or not it gets passed. I have pretty high hopes, though, considering that Republicans fighting against contraceptive rights is really unpopular. But it is their end goal. They have actively stated in numerous of their, briefings about what they want to focus on as a point of attack, as a target going forward in Project 2025 and into 2024 for the election. Contraceptive rights is one of them. They want to destroy them in red states, in particular, in the same way that they've been destroying abortion rights in those states. And so, while they can't outright state it, because most Americans are very opposed to that, even most Americans who vote Republican, it is still the plan. And they're kind of losing, because they can't actually fight against the left's now preemptive moves to codify reproductive rights without letting the game become apparent that they're trying to attack reproductive rights. Because right now, their method is to try to claim the Democrats are trying to codify reproductive rights into law sort of needlessly. But if the Republicans try to fight them on this legally, then, well, they aren't doing it needlessly. Clearly, the Republicans are against it and want to take away reproductive rights. They won't be able to claim that the Democrats are doing this needlessly anymore. State Representative Zacchaeus Summers, a Democrat from Jackson, said the new Right to Contraceptive Act is about protecting Mississippians, I love that, Mississippians, freedom to determine the kind of future they want for their lives. It would codify their right to be able to access contraception. Family planning is a really big deal when it comes to the ability to grow generational wealth as well, by the way. So we've talked about this before, but most people's life can be very, very heavily determined by experts that just have a certain set of variables that seem very inconsequential, but with those variables alone, experts can very accurately determine where someone's going to end up. And those things are simply, what zip code were they born into? How many parents do they have in their household? And did their parents own a house? Those three things alone is all that experts need to extraordinarily accurately graph out what that person's life is going to end up being like. It just extremely effective. And the fact is, the reason for this is that in America, we have a cycle, a perpetuated cycle of poverty. If you're poor in America, it is expensive to be poor. It is really hard to save money. It is very hard to do the things that are necessary to no longer be poor, because a lot of the things that... So, for example, let's say you want to go to college and try to get your education, like a higher education to try to get a better job, so you're not making such little money. Well, how are you going to balance going to school and working the job you currently have to keep food on your table? How do you do that? Many can't. For a lot of people, it's literally easier or even only possible to just get a second part-time job to help make a little extra money. And that's what a lot of Americans do. But what this causes is a lack of ability to take the time to go to school or to learn the knowledge needed to know how to get out of your current status in life. Knowledge alone is a very important form of generational wealth. And one of the best ways to build generational wealth is to have the freedom and the ability and the resources to family plan. An unwanted, unexpected pregnancy that you're not ready for can be life-ruining. the amount of work it takes to raise a child, especially as like a single parent, in which case this is very common, it's astronomical. It is nearly impossible. It is impossible for many people. Some people just simply can't do it. They can't. They aren't able to do such a thing. And when Republicans attack the right to access to family planning healthcare, it's obviously a show of the fact that they want to preserve the cycle that keeps the economic hierarchy that exists currently. They need to keep a class of poor people existing to act as a fear motivator for the middle class to continue working. Like, as long as there are poor and homeless people out there, that acts as a fear motivator for the average working class, middle class person to work so they don't end up in that position. And the more that Republicans demonize homeless people and make it harder to be homeless, the worse that possibility looks. And of course, they want to maintain the hierarchy of higher economic statuses. They don't want to allow for policies that would increase taxes for, wealth taxes and increase taxes for insanely higher brackets, right? Because they want to maintain that economic hierarchy because it's seen as a motivator for people to work harder, sort of delirious or delusionally, right? How many people have you met that thought if they worked really, really hard in their like low ass level job that they'll make it to like manager and then eventually like upper manager and then eventually regional manager and then maybe one day they'll be living in like a multi-$100,000 house and they'll have a pool and a stable income and everything. Like, obviously that's becoming a lot less common now as people start to wake up to the fact that that's just fake, right? Like, you're just gonna be working harder for nothing. But there are still people who think that way, and the idea that if you don't work hard enough, you'll end up homeless, and that if you work hard enough, you can end up rich and successful, is a very, very delusional and powerful narrative that keeps people believing the kind of shit that gets Republicans elected. And one of the best ways to kind of maintain that cycle of poverty, because you need poor people to exist for this to, continue, this cycle to continue, this system to work, for that fear to exist, like, in their view, they think if there's not poor people, if there's not homeless people, if you can't go homeless if you don't work, then people just won't work. So they have to maintain the fear of being homeless or extremely destitute as something that would be a very awful outcome if you don't continue to work your ass off. And then they give you a delusional idea that if you work really hard, you can be extremely successful. All of it is really to serve the capitalist machine. It's kind of been the elephant in the room this whole time, but I think that all really does come back to contraceptives at the end of the day, the fact that conservatives are so opposed to it. Contraceptives are one of the best ways for someone who is not financially well off to prevent themselves from ending up in an even worse place financially, with even more responsibility. Being able to say, no, I'm not getting pregnant until I am ready to get pregnant, or I'm not getting someone pregnant until I'm ready to get someone pregnant, is an extremely, extremely valuable tool, and it's more valuable the less money you have. Conservatives try to delusionally argue that the welfare state makes it actually more economically beneficial to have more kids, but the fact is that unless you are literally neglecting them and not, like, raising them or doing anything for them, and just, like, pocketing the money you get from the government for having kids and no job, or just having kids at all, like, the idea that, like, people are able to do that and live off of that money, and that it's like it makes a big difference to begin with, is delusional. Absolutely delusional. But conservatives argue it anyway. It's just like it's the same thing with homeless people supposedly living a homeless lifestyle. They try to take people who are in situations they literally can't help or change and find some weird contrived way that it's actually a moral failing on their part and their fault that they are in the position they're in. Anyway, got a little stun-locked there, but it's related. Quote, this legislation helps families determine their economic mobility, that's what I was talking about, so that they can make the best financial decisions for them and their families, said Summers. Quote, they may be asking questions like, can we afford to raise a child right now? Do we have the jobs necessary to be able to take family leave? Unquote. This bill, this law, if passed, would make free shit tons of contraceptive like medicines and forms of healthcare for people. Tons of different family planning options would be made free, covered by work and like work insurance, covered by Medicare. Like, it would be astronomical if this passes. The amount of people who otherwise can't afford contraceptive care that would be able to if this passes would be huge. Summers pointed out that contraception goes beyond family planning because it has many health benefits, including reducing the risk of certain cancers, STDs, HIV, and AIDS. This is a whole other pillar of this conversation I completely forgot to talk about. If you have less money, if you're economically, financially less well off, getting an STD or whatever is going to be infinitely worse for you than if you're not economically well off, right? Like, isn't syphilis really common to the extent that, like, you probably know someone who's gotten it and you're at some point in your life? I know you just treat it with, like, antibiotics, right? It's just a bacterial infection. You treat it with antibiotics. Like, even then, even something like syphilis, which is pretty common from what I hear, and can be treated with antibiotics, like penicillin, according to Heavy Gretel, like, even then, if you aren't wealthy, or you aren't, like, at least, if you're poor, getting a day off work, then going to a doctor, and being able to afford a prescription of antibiotics might not be an option for you. So the fact that you don't even have the option to use contraception that can prevent those diseases, even the most mild of them, that is a problem that is especially bad for people who are lower income. They don't have the money to afford the prevention right now or the solution. She added that it also helps with preventing maternal mortality and migraines. That's also, well, yeah, of course. Like, if you are a woman who has a history, familially, of really, really hard births, really hard deliveries that have been near death for, like, the mother in most cases, then chances are not being able to have contraceptive access when you know that if you get pregnant, there's a very good chance that you almost die or will die. Yeah, that's definitely going to be pretty stressful. Not having access to the contraceptive health care that you need to prevent that from happening. Summers said contraceptives such as the birth control pill and the IUDs are currently available in the state, but because of the confusion around the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, there are some gaps in access. She added there's also some hesitancy among healthcare professionals to prescribe birth control. Quote, we have not received a clear response from our leadership in terms of what will happen with contraceptives in the state of Mississippi, said Summers, and so this legislation is really an opportunity to be on the offense, not have to wait and see what's going to happen. So even though in Mississippi, contraceptive rights are not necessarily banned or destroyed as we're speaking, doctors and many medical professionals are already just too scared to prescribe them or offer them because the Republican messaging about whether or not they will be criminally tried for doing so has been so vague and unclear that medical professionals are just scared to even come close to it. So functionally right now, through much of Mississippi and a lot of these red states, a lot of contraceptives, as far as whether or not you can get them or the services from doctors, are functionally banned because they're just scared. And the messaging has been purposefully, deliberately vague and unclear as to whether or not they'll be punished for offering them. So this bill would make it clear, make it very clear, yes, doctors and medical professionals are legally protected in offering these medical services. Here's the last line. She added that in order to move the law through the committee process and onto the floor for a vote, it is critical that Mississippians work with the state legislators who serve on the committee to which the bill is being referred. Let me see. Let me check this. Apparently Summers said that other states have the intent or already have introduced legislation similar to this. Let's check it out. AmericansForContraception.org. Here's how we were fighting back in 2023. The right to contraception is not guaranteed. While most people aren't paying attention, legislators in multiple states have introduced bills that threaten the right to basic contraception, like IUDs. Nevada's governor vetoed a bipartisan bill that would have protected the right to contraception with no explanation. But some lawmakers are stepping up, working on bills that would protect the right to contraception before it can be taken away. Here's a look at what's in progress. In North Carolina, state senators introduced the Right to Use Contraception Act, which is just 4 sentences, as simple as it gets. Legislators are working to force a vote on it and show their constituents where they stand on this issue. In Wisconsin and Arizona, lawmakers introduced their own statewide Right to Contraceptive Act, which would protect and reserve the right to contraception, including condoms, the pill, and IUDs. Representative Kathy Manning and Senator Ed Markey reintroduced the Right to Contraception Act this summer, setting the stage for a nationwide bill to codify the right to contraception in federal law. So yeah, across the country right now, we're seeing some Democrat lawmakers pushing to codify right to access to contraception in law on a state level. This is why it's so important to care about state and local elections. I know it's easy to just only care about the presidential election, to think that's all that matters because that's really all the Republicans seem to care about more often than not, but the local elections really matter. They really, really do. Because depending on who gets voted governor, for example, that can determine whether or not an entire state's worth of people have access to, say, contraceptive rights, or the right to transition, or hell, the right to get married if they're gay. Because guess what? That heavily Republican-leaning Supreme Court is going after gay marriage next. You guys know that, right? Like, gay marriage is on the docket for them to destroy. Yeah, they're going after that. It's going to be up to each individual state whether or not you can get married if you're gay. Like, sooner than later. Nice, Ethan. My main point here is, Republicans on the electoral stage are monsters. They aren't honest about what they want to do, and even when they are honest about what they want to do, they aren't honest about why they want to do it. And one of the things they aren't even honest about wanting to do is destroying your right to access contraception and family planning services. Obviously, they're against abortion, but they're against everything else that is in that ballpark. They do not want you to have sex and the consequence to not be having a baby. That they don't want it. They don't want to allow it. They think it should be illegal for anything to exist that allows you to have sex and for the consequence to not be a child being conceived from it. With that in mind, keeping Republicans out of office on every level is extremely important. Both the presidential and the local. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and reference you all to Progressive Victory. Please consider volunteering with them. They're fighting against Republicans all across the country to keep them out of office, to lobby and ask for and canvass and like argue for Democrats. Like, go around, volunteer. They'll have you phone bank. They'll have you canvass. They've got all sorts of different things you can do to help Democrat candidates across the country stay in power if they're being challenged in their election, or gain power if they are challenging a Republican in their election. Because the fact is, all of this matters the most on a local level. And Progressive Victory is doing that, right? So if you want to do something, if you're as motivated to protect your rights as they are to attack them, then consider joining up with Progressive Victory. They have been working really, really hard to come up with lots of ways that anybody, whether you want to leave your house or literally go and canvass with them, that anyone can find a way to help. So please, !PV in chat. There's a link right there, and you can go check it out. So yeah, with all that said, guys, check out Progressive Victory. Go volunteer. No matter what you are comfortable with, they've got something that you can do and something that you'll be comfortable doing, no matter how terminally online you are, for lack of better phrasing. I'm sure they'll find something. Phone banking, for example, is really helpful alone, so maybe you could do phone banking if you don't like leaving the house, but if you want to go somewhere, you could do canvassing. They've got all sorts of stuff you can do. So go check out that link, and yeah, make a difference. You can do stuff that makes a difference. Do some direct action, please. Volunteer. I promise you, you will not regret it. You will feel fulfilled.